there is in the second chilek of Tanya, the Hagdoma, what's called the Chinuch Koton. The Chinuch Koton, this is the Hagdoma, this is the introduction to the second chilek of Tanya of Shar HaYichud V'Emunah. Right in the start of the Chinuch Koton, the Alter Rebbe says, Chanoich lanar al pi darkoi, gam ki yaskin liyosem yimen. Which means that you should educate, rear and train and allow the growth of a nar, of a child, al pi darkoi, according to his way. Gam ki yaskin, so thus, even when he matures, liyosem yimen, he will not stray from it. So the Alter Rebbe asks, what's the great thing? If this is a child's educational level, so what's so great about guaranteeing that Liyaskin V'Yochim Mena, that when he grows up and he matures, he will not move away from it? And he explains briefly that as a person grows, even a tzaddik, he says Sheva Yipir Tzaddik L'kom, that even a tzaddik does not continuously stay on one path, on one level. There's a constant growth, and the growth process is such that it requires that he should, from time to time, when he reaches a certain stage, he lets go, so to speak, of the parameters and the real recognitions that he had up until now, in order to move on to the next stage. And during this intermediate situation where he lets go of the previous recognitions and the previous convictions to go to the next stage, he kind of loses his footing. And he loses sense of where he stands. And therefore it's called Yipoil. It's called a Nefila. He falls down. But then afterwards, of course, he rises up again. But what happens during this fall? How does he sustain himself? How does he continue to be a tzaddik? How does he continue to follow in the right path during this fall and during the time that he had lost his footing? So he explains that this is what sustains him during this time. This is the chinuch. This is the rearing and the training that he received as a child. And this is what sustains him during this time. You're all familiar with this. I'm just repeating from time, right?
Of course.
Everybody's familiar with this. Yes or no? I just want to know if it's clear, because I want to elaborate on this.
Some of us haven't done this.
Excuse me?
Some of us haven't done this.
Haven't done this part. Okay, but you do you understand? Is it sufficient, this introduction? Because I'm not going to learn this part with you now. All I want to is just go further and elaborate how it pertains to us here. Okay, you understand this? The question is, good and well for someone who had this early training as a child. So he has this backing, something to fall on as he progresses. So that when he falls from his madrege, he doesn't fall all the way, because he's got a base that sustains him. What happens to Baal Teshuvah, who doesn't have that base? And Baal Teshuvah also has to continually grow, and also has to go through this process of going from stage to stage. How does he sustain himself during this time? What I want to explain to you is that the Baal Teshuvah also has a stage that's called the stage of youth. What is the stage of youth in a normal situation? A young child growing up in a Jewish home, and he's getting the proper chinuch. As the Alter Rebbe says over there, it's just a youthful chinuch. He hasn't yet fully understood what this is all about, and he only has really a very superficial understanding what it's about. He has to definitely pursue it much further and get into its depth. So what's the value of it? What is it about? There's one most important ingredient in that during this time, things are perfectly clear. He doesn't have an iota of doubt. He sees perfectly clear what is good and what is the right way and which way is going. And the reason is perfectly clear. It's not just because my tati said so, so my mommy said so, but because, in fact, the child naturally relates to that which he's being taught. It finds a place in his mind, and it settles in, and he feels perfectly comfortable with it. This is, for him, a basic reality. I've never heard of a child being taught Breishis Bora Elikim Hashemayim v'Haaretz, and he should say, "What? Where is? I don't see God. That He should create the Shemayim v'Haaretz. He created the world. It makes perfect good sense to a child that God created the Shemayim v'Haaretz finds its place in his mind perfectly well." Because he has an neshama, and he learns whatever he learns with an open mind, with his full neshama, and thus he can relate to it. Yes, of course, it makes perfect good sense. And whatever he learns, everything finds its place in his mind, in his pure mind. This absence of doubt carries a person through his entire lifetime. During his lifetime, he faces all kinds of challenges. Whether it be a tzaddik, even a tzaddik, as the Alter Rebbe says, but certainly if he's less than a tzaddik. The minute one steps out from his father's home, the minute he goes even further, he goes out of yeshiva, the minute he has to go and look for a job, things are no longer so smooth. He comes into the world and he says, yes, up until now I was of the opinion that God runs everything. Nothing happens, even superficially, without the hand of God. Now all of a sudden when I come and look for a job, and I'm perfectly well suited for this job, and the guy for some political reason doesn't want to give it to me because he hates Jews. Oh, what happened over here? This does not fit in my structure of the world. This is just a very simple illustration of what the worldly challenge to emunah and to purity is. But this chinuch, this recognition that what the truth is, that cannot budge, that cannot change. The world will present challenges, and that's what my my challenges. This is what my adult life, my learning has prepared me for, to know how to face up to it, and to know how to both face up to it, not to be faced by it, and go around it and pursue my path. But it will never shake me to say, okay, I completely misunderstood the world. Such a thing is not going to happen, no matter what the challenge is. And then, as the Alter Rebbe explains, that even in his spiritual growth, as he pursues his development, and he reaches a higher stage, and then he has to recreate new parameters, new interpretations, new understanding, new insights. During this time, he falls back to this simple and pure recognition of the truth. And this is what carries him through in this, what's called null stage. This similar experience exists with every Baal Teshuva. And it's important that we recognize it and know the strength that this provides us with. And where is that strength? Where is it recognized? In the youth, meaning at the moment when the Baal Teshuva makes a decision, I'm changing, turning around my lifestyle 180 degrees, and I'm going in a different direction. This is the youth of the Baal Teshuva. At that moment, everything looked rosy to him. He had absolutely no doubt he's making the correct decision. And he wasn't, Chas v'sholom, fooling himself. The reason he had absolutely no doubt is because he saw the truth. He saw the singular truth, the sharp truth of where he is going and what he's looking for. And he saw, in contrast to the world he is coming from, that this is completely devoid of this quality. And therefore, he had a very clear path, a very clear recognition of where he's going. He makes that decision, and he changes his lifestyle, and he comes, depending on his stage in life and so forth, he comes into yeshiva or whatever his process is. And then he starts learning. And when he starts learning, he is not learning exclusively this concept that he recognized at the moment of decision. He's learning a whole bunch of different things. And during this process in learning, he learns about how to conduct yourself b'nodam l'chaveirei, how to conduct yourself b'nodam la'mokim. Some things he understands, some things he doesn't, some things he can relate to, some things he can't. And at some point in time, he can turn around and lose sight of this youth, of this pure and clear vision, clear view of what his decision is. And he starts asking himself, am I interested in this involvement or not? This challenge, whether it's a challenge within the learning environment or a challenge in the world, makes no difference. This is a challenge to an intelligent person who has to resort back. He doesn't know all the answers. And he has to resort back to his initial clear view of what he's looking for. This clear view of his initial decision, this will carry him through all trials of his life. This is the Alpi Darkei, this is his initial youth, that will sustain him throughout his life. There's much to elaborate on this. Maybe it's another time. But I just want to complete the thought. Along with this benefit that the Rebbe explains, that he has got something to fall back onto, there's another extremely important aspect in this. I'll try to explain it with some kind of illustration from a simple physical phenomenon. In physical phenomena, if a person has to lift his hand or pick up a sefer, seems a natural action just to pick up a sefer. But we don't recognize that, physically speaking, in order to pick up a sefer, one has to be anchored. He has to sit. He has to have a solid base. Otherwise, he won't be able to pick up the sefer. And when he picks up the sefer, he is actually leaning and pressing against this solid base. You should know it in your exercise things. You have to, and everything has to be properly coordinated and anchored, so that to do the simplest physical action, the entire person, the entire body actually comes into coordination in order to do a simple physical act. And if one is not properly coordinated, is not properly balanced, the simplest physical act can throw him completely off balance. The same holds true in a person's life, in the spiritual or intellectual and emotional life. Every person, everyone who's come into adulthood has a whole life, has a whole stretch of experience behind it. One cannot deem himself born today and act on the basis that, okay, this is what I have to do, and that which preceded doesn't exist. There's no such thing. It doesn't work. In order that an action should be a wholesome action, that he should be completely into it, the whole person has to be into it. The whole person with his entire baggage, his entire background, all has to be involved in his future. Chassidus explains that about Teshuvah, there are many madrigas in Baal Teshuvah. And the highest madriga in Teshuvah is Zdoinis Nasalek Ezochies. That's Zdoinis. Things that were done, inappropriate things that were done with the conscious intent of doing something wrong. Nasalek Ezochies, I must transform into mitzvahs. How so? How can an Aveda become a mitzvah? So simply, Chassidus explains that when one recognizes the inadequacy of what he has done, and this propels him to change and to correct his way, this gives him extra strength in correcting his way. Therefore, this wrong deed has now become a positive force. And that's how it becomes as office. At the moment when the Baal Teshuvah recognizes with sufficient clarity that he has to change his path in life, his entire background and all that he's experienced up until now is now focused, is now the force that tells him and puts into contrast the false world against the true world. So that he is actually deriving strength from all the errors that he has made in the past. Because this is what brought him to this clear view, to this pure recognition of where he has to go now. Thus, he is not breaking away. He doesn't become, like a half person. Every person has to know that he was born as an infant. He can be born at age 20. Hashem made it that a human being should be born an infant, not like a havdil, an animal that 2 hours after its birth it's already running around. The reason for that is that it takes time for the human being to develop and to acquire the relationship to the entire existence that he has to be a participant in. And during these developmental years, he becomes acquainted. He has a sense of being related to the entire world, to his entire environment. If he were born right away an adult, then everything that he comes in contact with is a strange thing to him. He is immediately judging, should I go there, should I not go there? A child knows that the whole world is his stage. And this is how he grows up in the world. That one must never lose. One must know that, yes, I was born an infant, and from infancy up until this point, I have learned all of these things, and I found out where I should have to go. Maybe I found it out from the negative, but I found out. And now I have a clear view of this. This provides the Baal Teshuvah with the wholesomeness, with the completeness to his life, so that he doesn't divorce himself, so he doesn't cut off half of his life and say, okay, that was all to naught. It wasn't. It was that which led him to recognize, to his spiritual youth, so to speak. And this is why the spiritual youth actually gives him the sustenance throughout his lifetime, because he knows clearly well what it's based on. It wasn't just a spontaneous decision, okay, I want to go this way. It wasn't what people, say, oh, this is a youthful craze. It's a real, intelligent, basic decision based on tremendous amount of experience and exposure. So that Baal Teshuvah has the same benefits, and in some respects even more, as what the Alter Rebbe explains, the strength by which to to sustain himself throughout his lifetime, to the framework with which to face challenges. And also the ability to feel perfectly at home, to feel a complete individual, not just half individual. I came from a strange land and I'm just a stranger here. I'm here with my full being, including my previous experiences, because those are the things that actually taught me where I should go. And those are the things that clearly contrast against what I'm doing now. This is the greatest wish for anyone who is involved in helping the Baal Teshuvah, is to see that the Baal Teshuvah is not chas v'sholem less than a full personality, than a full individual. He is in constant fear, or maybe I'm doing something wrong. Am I allowed to go there? Am I allowed to go there? The Baal Teshuvah eventually has to feel completely comfortable, and there's absolutely every reason for him to feel completely comfortable where he is, in his, so to speak, new life path. Because it is new life path only for him. But as far as Hashem is concerned, as far as the truth is concerned, he was born into Hashem's world from the very moment that he was born. It took him time to identify what the truth of the world is. Now he identified, and that's where he is. So the Baal Teshuvah is absolutely allowed to smile and to rejoice and to do things with simcha, with Nebesh's help and wholesomely. Lots of